Welcome to a Parallel Project Training, APM Project Management Qualification podcast based on the APM Body of Knowledge 7th edition. You should be using this in conjunction with our e-learning, podcasts, and potentially a tutor-led course. For more information, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.
Welcome to another Parallel Project Training podcast. This podcast is based on the Body of Knowledge 7th edition. My name is Jan Underdown, and with me today I have John Bolton. So say hello, John.
Hello, everybody.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about organisational roles within the project environment. So the assessment criteria we're going to be covering within this podcast will be looking at the role and key responsibilities of the project manager, the differences between the responsibilities of the project manager and the project sponsor throughout the project, so what they actually do, and also other roles like project team members, suppliers, users, the steering group, and also the product owner. Okay, John, can you just describe to me what a steering group actually is? What does it do?
Well, what a steering group does is oversees the running of the job. So if you've got a project, you'll have a steering group be made up of a number of people who are senior in the business, usually quite important decision makers. And then someone from that steering group will be usually nominated as a key individual in the role of running the job.
It's like what we call a sponsor.
Yeah. So the sponsor is somebody drawn from the business, and their role really is to make sure that the project delivers the benefits that's intended. So the project manager will report to the sponsor on a day-to-day basis. It's unreasonable to expect to get a group of senior people all in a room together to make decisions, because you get 7 people, you get 8 different decisions, So it's just, you've got to try and focus the control of the project onto one key person, and that's the sponsor. But they can't really do it on their own, so they need some help, they need some support, and that's what the steering group are there to do.
Right, so this sponsor role is a very important role within the project.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's usually considered to be the sort of key pivotal role, the link between the project and the business.
Right.
So, nothing happens unless the sponsor says so, sort of thing. So the project manager, but that doesn't mean to say the project manager's neutered. It doesn't mean to say they're not important. But the sponsor is really engaged in the delivery of the benefits of the job. So they're going to be looking after the business case at the beginning, and they're going to be making sure the benefits are realised at the end. Meanwhile, the project manager, it's like the swan, isn't it? The swan sort of sliding gently across the surface, and the project management legs are sort of busy underneath the water. So So I think, and the relationship between the project manager and the sponsor is quite important, because what you don't want to do is you don't want to end up kind of just casting the project manager adrift and the sponsor becoming detached from it all. But equally, you don't want the sponsor so engaged and they end up treading all over it and getting in the way of the project manager and what they're trying to do. So
the sponsor wouldn't be involved in the day-to-day work of the project. That would be down to the project manager.
No, that's right. But I mean, the sponsor may well have sort of roles in the business. So, I mean, they may be having meetings within the business to try and warm them up to the idea of the project. But no, I mean, they're not negotiating with the teams and the suppliers, and they're not sort of liaising with the users about what's going to be delivered. No, but I'd hate to think the sponsor sort of turns up, writes the business case, goes away and comes back at the end of the project 5 years later to kind of realise all the benefits. I mean, they have to be engaged on a fairly frequent basis.
Okay. We've been talking about benefits in a later podcast, of course. Okay, so to summarise the key roles of a project sponsor, you talked about the business case, you talked about the benefits. Is there anything else? And also supporting the project manager and kind of representing the steering group, whoever that steering group may be within the business. Is there anything else the sponsor may be involved with?
Well, I think, to a large degree, they're there to help the project manager. They're there to put the project manager in a position where they can succeed.
Right.
So that they don't, they don't get cast adrift, as it were.
Right.
The sponsor will be looking at dealing with any issues that the project manager raises with them. They'll be sort of sorting out any sort of any issues with the steering group, anything that's coming down from the business. So if there's anything happening that the project manager is unaware of, then the communication goes down as well as up. They'll be dealing with key risks. They might have key stakeholder responsibilities, so they might be dealing with key stakeholders. So there's a whole bunch of stuff the sponsor's doing, and really that relationship's quite important. But yeah,
Yeah, cool.
a whole bunch of stuff.
Right. So the project manager, you talked about the project manager doing the day-to-day stuff around the project, being the swan. You're dealing with stakeholders on the ground, managing the teams, dealing with the suppliers. So what kind of authority does a project manager have?
Well, they have the authority that's vested in them by virtue of what the relationship they have with the sponsor. I mean, you're not a project manager just because somebody says so. You're a project manager because you exert your authority, and that authority has to be enshrined in some sort of delegated papers, So you have a thing called a RACI chart generally, and the sponsor's accountable for the job, and the project manager's responsible for delivering the project. So the project manager will be running the project on a day-to-day basis. They'll be hiring and firing the project team. They'll be organising the plans. They'll be organising the processes and procedures like change control and configuration management. So, but the thing the project manager really does is they manage the stuff that's in the project management plan, because that's the document that's been signed off by the project sponsor. So
yes, often called the contract between the project manager and the sponsor.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, it may, in some instances, it may well be a real contract. I mean, if your project manager's in a client or in a contract organisation, then it may well be a contract. Yeah, so I mean, the sponsor says to the project manager, "Go deliver this project for me," and it's not unreasonable. They expect him to go and do it. I mean, they have to be put in a position where they've got enough, materials and money and all the rest of it. But the project manager says, yes, I'll go do that, and there's a sort of emotional as well as a sort of procedural relationship going on there.
Right.
So project manager should be just delivering the project. I mean, it could
just
be,
yes.
we don't want to get into what is a project at the moment, but we've already done all that. But in terms of they just run the project. The sponsor really is just interested in benefits.
Yes, you can often describe the project manager's job as spinning plates in a circus act.
Yeah.
Yeah, dealing with all the actual variances. Okay, and also by delivering the project, they need teams and also suppliers. So what is the relationship between the project manager and the team? How is that authority or delegation done?
People get quite confused about all this because the project manager might employ people directly. So if you're working for an organisation where you have people internally, let's say an IT department or civil engineers or whatever it is, project manager might be actually directing the activity of individuals. Yeah. Alternatively, the project manager may be engaging suppliers. So if you're building a building, you're probably not, maybe not have all the skills that you need. You're going to go and employ some plumbers or some bricklayers or whatever it is. So the relationship the project manager has with the suppliers and the project manager with the team are two different things. They still both deliver stuff, so they still both build buildings or deliver IT systems or whatever it is. But the suppliers, really, you're normally managing a project manager. You're not managing individuals. And that other project manager is normally managing individuals in turn. So you've got like a hierarchy here going on. But the key difference is the relationship between the project manager and the suppliers is contractual. So there will be a written down agreement that the suppliers and a specification and all those other things. So there is a more formal, if you like, with regard. So down that limb of the diagram, if you're looking in the book, is down that limb you've got a contract. So you've got to do things like contract management. You've got to do things like regular progress reviews, etc., etc. If you look at the team limb of it, you're managing them as individuals. So it's more about motivation and leadership and communications and so on. So that whilst the two are very similar, conceptually they're very different.
Very different, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You could actually argue that the work package for internal teams almost act as that kind of informal contract. What they're expecting to deliver as part of the work package, the time, the cost.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're still going to organise the work packages as work packages, but it's just going to depend on who you give them to.
Yes.
You either give a work package to your database analyst, or you give a work package to your civil engineer, or you give a work package to a contract company to build a shed or whatever it is you're going to build. So, the level of the work package is interesting. I mean, we talk about that in planning and scope management, but the work packages aren't necessarily a definitive guide as to what role. But sure, yeah, I mean, a team might have multiple work packages, but a supplier might have multiple work packages.
Yes. Okay, thanks, John. There's another role within the organisational structure called the users.
Yeah.
And I know from my experience, sometimes they're quite an interesting group to actually get them involved with the project. What's your experience of users? Should be the role of the user?
Well, they're sort of much maligned, aren't they? You always hear people say everything would be fine if it wasn't for the users, So, but ultimately they're, again, confusion. I mean, the four things users do is they specify what they want, they accept it once it's been delivered, they operate that thing in operational service, and ultimately they're going to advise the sponsor on things like benefits to be derived, acceptability of deliverables and so on. So the sponsor can't necessarily accept anything or describe anything or specify anything without the support of the users. So the users are quite fundamental. People always scratch around who are the users.
And these are the people on the ground who's going to be using the output from the project.
Yeah, well, that's right. If you come back to those four key points, if they're specifying what they want, accepting what they want, observing the benefits, and then helping describe those to the sponsor, if they're doing those, then they're a user, whether they like it or not.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you've got a new railway system, the users aren't the travelling public because they're not specifying what they want. They're not accepting it. They might choose to have a view on that later on, but formally they haven't got a role. So with a new railway, Crossrail or HS, who is the? Well, it's probably the government. It's probably the train operating company. It's somewhere in between, But so don't get confused by the term user. It's a generic term, and it's more important to understand what it is those groups of people do.
Yes,
that helps describe them rather than do it the other way around. So don't try and think of groups of users and then try and fit them into the model. Think of the model and then try and fit the people in. And everyone will fit in. If they don't fit into the category of user, i.e. if they don't specify what they want, if they don't accept it, if they don't operate it, then they're just somebody else.
Yes, and then again, stakeholders.
I mean, we're all... if you take Crossrail, I mean, we're all stakeholders in it. I mean, but some have got more interest than others, and that's a topic of another podcast.
Yes. And it's often the link to the actual achievement of the benefits is how the users will actually engage with the project. Will they actually then define their requirements? Will they actually use the output in the way it was designed to actually then derive the benefits? So there's two areas here which are very important, is the stakeholder engagement and the benefits as terms to the users. But there's a new role that's been introduced, or within the syllabus of the BoK7, is the term product owner. So how do you see that working, John?
I think, this comes down a lot to the introduction of this idea of iterative life cycles and the desire of the APM to try and encapsulate less structured waterfall method approaches into the curriculum and syllabus. And product owner is a term that's been used in lots of different ways. I mean, years ago, product owner used to be someone who was then a configuration item owner.
Yes.
So the product owner would be the person who's created the individual product. In an iterative, agile environment, the product owner is seen more as being the person who is going to own that product when it's in operational use.
Right, so it goes within the project and then into the business.
Yeah, that's right. So they're responsible for making sure that the requirements and are actually being properly addressed by the project. So when the project's doing stuff, it's the product owner really that's going to be guiding that, right, rather than the product owner owning a specification and creating a product. Yeah, in the old days, perhaps you could call it the old days. I still think the old days are the new days, actually. But I think the vast majority of people do linear life cycles and observe a product owner as the person that owns the product at the end of the job.
Yes. Uh-huh.
I mean, the two aren't different. They're just different, slightly different in concept. In a waterfall method, a product owner owns the specification and produces the product. And
they would be liaising with the users to get the requirements,
right,
the detailed stuff.
Yeah, I think that happens as well even more so in an iterative life cycle, where you've got, you've got that more complex relationship between the product owner and the project team, and there's a more gooey, sort of messy relationship between the two. So it's not like, let's produce a specification, let's go and produce the product. It's more about talking about the thing as it evolves and develops.
And then, as you said, it takes it on into its operational use, and then do the upgrades and look after the configuration of it.
Yeah.
So overall, to summarise this particular section, it's important to make sure that all the roles and responsibilities and the organisational structure is defined within projects. And we've seen lots of, within our experience, what it hasn't been. It can be one of the reasons why projects fail.
Well, that's right. I mean, nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't describe the role, then someone will move into it, or something will compensate for it. So if you haven't got anyone describing what they want, i.e. the users, then the project manager will just develop what they think's right. If you haven't got a project manager, then the sponsor will start to do it, and then you get a mess between delivering the benefits and delivering the project. They won't understand which one of those they're supposed to be doing. If you don't have a clear relationship between the project manager and suppliers, the suppliers get pulled into all sorts of different directions.
Yes.
If the team don't know who their boss is, then they're going to end up going native and wandering off with the fairies. So you need something that describes those things. And whether you like the model as a concept or not is slightly irrelevant. It is what it is.
Yes.
And the argument is that you need all of those roles, whether they're formal or informal, written down or not written down, they will all happen. And it's important for the project manager to understand who's doing what, really.
And especially if you've got a kind of a contractual relationship as well, where the contractor will have their project manager and their teams and their kind of steering group's bosses, that those relationships need to be well defined, and also the reporting and accountability around the project. Okay, John, well, thank you very much. It's been very informative, and I hope you enjoyed this.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast and found it informative. To find out about our training courses, e-learning or tutor-led course, please go to www.parallelprojecttraining.com.
Podcast.